Hello and welcome back to Jack's Coffee Break. My name is Jack, this is my coffee break. Today we're going to be continuing our build tutorial. So as I slowly move the camera, I'm rotating towards some of the buildings that I've built so far. So this is the one that we built in the last tutorial. If you missed it, this is part of a series. The first one was about the widget tool and the controls for building. If you are brand new to building and you don't feel comfortable with the controls, I strongly recommend watching that video, because trying to fight with the controls is one of the things that's going to absolutely kill creativity. Getting familiar with your tools is going to help you build and feel confident in your building. So I definitely recommend that. This is what we built last time. This is just a simple building, and how you can go from just a square plain Jane box to something that looks like this. You know, it's not necessarily meeting all of our requirements in game, but it fits into a grander picture, and it's something that you can place anywhere and make it look good. So that was last time. This time we are going to be talking about mixed use buildings. So what is a mixed use building? This is a mixed-use building, but we're not going to be building this because, my goodness, it's taken me approximately 10 hours to just build this monstrosity. So we're not going to do that. We're going to do something simple, and I'm just going to teach you the basics. So what do we mean by mixed use? When we build in Planet Zoo, we're catering for 3 groups. We're catering to our guests, which is going to be anything in the facilities and the guest facilities. Anything in this tab is going to be a guest utility that they want. So for example, Pip's Hot Smoothies, that's going to be a drink stand. We're going to want one of those. We're also going to want some food. So we'll go into food. Let's grab, I don't know, a pizza pen, and we'll put it like over here. And we're going to need a toilet, right? So this, even though we have 3 different buildings, and we're going to have to surround these 3 different buildings and make them look good, ultimately, at the end of the day, these are guest buildings. They're just for them, and their requirements are different. We talked about scenery rating last time, and we see that we have a scenery rating 1%, but that it's brown and it doesn't matter to anything. So regardless of how good your guest facilities look, your guests will use them. They may not necessarily be happy about it, and normally what you'll get is, wow, this building looks really plain, or this zoo feels really small, or any of those normal complaints. When they're happy about it, they'll say, wow, this zoo looks really well decorated, etc. And it may increase sales, but I haven't tested that, so don't take my word for it. But at the end of the day, these are all for guests. Anything in the staff facilities is for your staff, obviously. So I'm not going to use a quarantine because those are miserable, but we do know that we're going to have 3 members of staff who are going to have to work on this, so let's give them a staff building. And to give them a staff room so that way they don't have to travel very far in order to take a break. So because we put down this little half stall right here, it's shifted our grid out of being 4 meter by 4 meter boxes. Instead, what we're getting are 4 meter by 2 meter boxes. So we need to account for that. So for that purpose, I'm going to put my staff building right here. And when we do that, this has different requirements than these. So I need to have scenery ratings, because otherwise this is going to have a negative impact on my guests. See, it doesn't matter for anybody who's walking up to this food stall, but anybody who walks into this bathroom is going to get hit with a negative impact from this staff building. So our goal is going to be to get this scenery rating and this radius small enough that it's no longer impacting this bathroom. So this would be considered a mixed use building, right? We're mixing our staff needs with our guest needs. If we wanted to take it a step further, we could expand this so that way it has a keeper hut, right? And in the back over here, we can add a habitat. So let's do something like this. And let's do the world's smallest habitat. Because we don't particularly care what's in here, we just care that it exists. So in this case, we have hit the trifecta. We're meeting all 3 needs. with this singular group unit. We are hitting guests, we are hitting staff, and we are hitting animals. And animals have needs that have absolutely nothing to do with guests or staff. So this is going to be a tall order, but it's something that we're going to make work today. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to define our building. So in the last video, all we did was we surrounded these little buildings, this insulation stuff, with some kind of wall that just covered over the object. But now I want to indicate that this is a singular unit. This is a singular building that we are tying together. The way we're going to do that is by framing out our building. So this keeper hut, I want it to be part of this unit. So I'm going to move it so that way it's in here. Into this habitat, I'm going to exit out. I'm going to take this habitat, edit barrier, I'm going to take it, delete it. I'm just going to move this, right? So that way maybe it sits, oh, I don't know, over here. And we're going to use the barriers even though I don't like to. Just so that way we can see where our habitat is supposed to go. There we go. Yep, almost. This gets a little bit finicky. There we go. Okay. So now we have this itty bitty habitat and we know that it's going to be attached to this. So, I don't want that there. I want another wall. Fill that out. There we go. Block this. Block this. And maybe we want to keep this window, so I'll use this shop front. And now this is all contained within a singular unit. How do I indicate that this habitat is part of this unit? First thing first I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another wall. I'm going to take it out. There we go, until it's framed as part of my building. And I'm going to get this door. And because I don't want to move this habitat again, I'm going to exit the group and this entire thing is selected. So now I can hit advanced move. And this is going to move the entire building with our widget. If we hit X, we'll see that because we have gridded pieces, we can't barrel roll it, but we can move it along the red and blue planes. So I'm just going to move this until my door matches up with my staff gate. There we go. Move it back just a little bit more. Right there. Oh, and these walls don't quite match up, which will matter when we put a roof on. There we go. I'm gonna move this. And close these off. There we go. So now our entire interior is framed. But how do we make this work? Oh, I've almost forgotten some pieces. Give me a second. And get a shop wall front. And for this, there's a lot of ways that you can deal with the bathrooms, but I prefer the simple method. I will just go in here and I'll grab this square arch, or I'll grab a wall arch and just frame it out like that. Simple, easy, effective. We're fine. But we do have this like boom, 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 stacking staircase kind of thing. And this is going to be very difficult to put a roof on, so that might be something we care about. So the next thing I would do is, in the very first tutorial we talked about how there is an align to grid button. This is where it matters, these pathing. So I want to have staff paths, so that way my guests can't get back here. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to align to the grid, but I'm going to align it to group 346. And the reason I'm doing that, instead of selecting it along, say, one of these items or creating a 4-meter path piece or whatever, is because I want it to stay in line with my building regardless of whatever else happens. There we go. So everything else is connecting. I'm going to deselect from the grid, and now I'm going to connect everything. This is another place where angle snap helps, especially on pathing. We will do an entire tutorial just about the pathing in Planet Zoo because it is awful and it is miserable, but that's not for now. So this little stand right here, it feels a little bit alone, it feels a little bit isolated, so how can we fix that? Well, there's a couple of ways. I want to keep this open. But maybe I don't want it to be completely open, I just want it to feel open. So one of the things we can do is we can go into Arctic. We'll grab this square large window. We'll put it right here. And then we'll go into glass. And let's get a glass wall. Let's say, that's a door frame. Here we go. Opaque glass wall. Let's do something like this. So right here we see that it's clipping on this side, or we can rotate it and it will clip like that. And I almost prefer that, quite frankly, so I think we're going to keep it like this. And again, we're going to try and keep things very simple. I'm not going to go into a full detailed, like, making this look fantastic. Right now our goal is to make it serviceable. And then we can come back to it and we can go, oh, okay, well I want this and this and this. Let's go back to Arctic. Let's grab a 1 meter wall like this. Let's pull it up to the top. And now this little stand is framed out. But we're still dealing with some staircasing. We've removed one staircase. Let's remove this staircase. And again, this will just make adding our roof a little bit easier later on. There we go. And now we have a Tetris piece. Is this the most creative building shape in the world? No. Does it function? Yes, it does. Is that all we care about? Yes. For now, at least. Our goal is to understand how to make this mixed unit building work. We will make it look good later. So where are we at? Right now, this staff building, which is the one that's going to interfere with our bathroom, is at 13% and has a 6% radius reduction. We want it at 50. And the reason we want it at 50 is we can see that it's still interfering with this bathroom. So what do we need to do now? Well, now we need a roof. We need to make sure that this thing is covered. So I don't want to use the Arctic pieces. I feel that they're going to blend too much. It's going to be a whole lot of brown for not a lot of good use. So let's steer away from that and let's talk about mixing build kits, yeah? We did a little bit of that last time. So I find that it is very easy to take the Arctic pieces and translate them into East Asian styles, but you don't have to. We can also go European with it. There are a multitude of options available to us. Arguably too many. Let me just find something I like here. Here we go. This red clay tiled roof is very flashy. Very, very flashy. You're gonna see it from a mile away. And maybe we want that because of the fact that we've got these guest buildings. So now I'm going to frame out my roof. How do I want to do that though? I know that this is the center mass of the building through here. And what I mean by that is that if you were to take the building and you were to balance it, its center of mass is going to be somewhere on this staff building line, and it's going to sit somewhere right in this area. So this is sort of our weight focal point. It might be a little bit farther out. It might be like right here. So considering the weight of a building, I find helps. It's a little bit like if you've ever balanced a knife. It's a little bit like that. You've got one end that, you know, if you hold it, it's gonna like tip over. If you hold it the other end, it's gonna tip over as well. Finding those balancing places I find helps in my architecture. Other people don't build like that. You know, you might think that what I'm talking about is complete bunk, and that's up to you. But the way that I think I'm gonna deal with that center of mass is I'm going to take these 4-meter super tall roofs and I am going to embrace the red. I am going to embrace color. And now I want this set of roofs to match up with that. So I'm going to take the 1-meter roofs, rotate them. I'm going to start over here. I'm going to move one up. And we still have this gap right here, so I'm going to do another one like that. And now I can select these, duplicate, and there we go. Already we have the framework. Let's say that this red roof, I like it, but I think it's too red. I'm just going to select all my roof pieces, and now I'm going to shift it. I like something like that. I think that looks good. It's notable, but it's no longer blinding. So now we need to finish off our corners in here. Let's go back and get... We could get our Arctic pieces. But let's actually mix things up a little bit. Let's go get some plaster. Get our plaster walls. And let's do our infill. Now we need to do this on the opposite side as well. And you would think that you would be able to select all of these parts. you'd be able to select all these parts, duplicate the selection, move it, and have it sit correctly. Unfortunately, it can't. So when you're dealing with a multi-selection of gridded pieces, it is always going to sit on whatever side of the line that you initially set it at. So if you set it, in this case, on the left side of the line, it is always going to sit on the left side of the line. It's not going to hop over to the right. This can be useful. For example, if I was building something like just a simple wall, I wanted to duplicate it, and I wanted to have another wall section right here, I can hit Z, rotate it, now it sits on the right side of the line. Not a big deal. I can't do that because this is clearly very directional. So I have to do it manually. There we go. So now we've got this bit of style. We got a little bit of color. These edges are not blending very well. Now there's a couple of things that we could do. We could change this color, right? We could decide, not that piece, there we go, that we want our plaster walls to be maybe a little bit more white, or more yellow, or more blue. Admittedly, I kind of like the blue, and I couldn't tell you why I like the blue, but I think we're going to stick with it, just for the sake of examples. But these edges are very hard. So this is a place where I would take a moment and I would add some trim. So there's a lot of pieces that you can use for trim. So for example, I believe these are included in the Europe pack, but there are these European marquee beams, and they're flexi color, which I love very much. So I can do some kind of neutral trim like that. I have my angle snap, I'm turning it back on, so that way I know when I rotate it, I'm rotating it exactly 90 degrees. I'm gonna pull it up, I'm gonna move it along the line, and I want it to stick out just a little bit. There we go. Nice and simple. And just by adding that little bit of trim, it helps to transition the eye between two very different materials. You know, we're going from the very smooth plaster down to a wood, and then we're also shifting from this very rich blue to this unsaturated wood. And so having a trim there helps to transition. It separates, but it transitions as well. Already we have something that is not looking good, but it is serviceable. Let's look at our staff building. We're at 42%, and we have 21 out of 50%. Let's see whether or not we're still impacting our bathroom. So this is our bathroom building. We see that we're still getting there. It's a little bit, we're getting a little bit of clipping in there. Not too terribly much. We almost have it removed. So this is a point where I would go back and I would do some of the techniques that we used on this little building, just framing it up a little bit with some of these posts. So I am going to do that real quick and come back, and then we will look at how things are progressing. Here we go, and we are back. So all I have done, which you probably, so as you saw during the speed build, hopefully, if you stuck around for that, or if you skipped through, that's fine. So I took the same building techniques that we learned over here, with the framing of our corners, the framing of our roofs, and adding different styles of awning, and I've applied it over here as well. So the richness of the East Asia wood, I think, works really well with pulling in the roof over here, and with contrasting and saturating between these sets of colors as well. So we're getting these pops of color. It's very vivid for a building. I don't think it's jarring. It's not tacky. It's not hot pink and neon green. Is this a particular style? Is this a particular culture? Can we point in a direction and say, oh yeah, this building definitely belongs here? No, we can't. It's very much its own little thing. And depending on the style of zoo that you want to build, this can be very useful. Sometimes you don't want a building that you look at and you say, oh, okay, this is clearly themed. Sometimes you just want the zoo to have its own thing going. In this case, that's what we're doing here. So the next thing that we have not done is we've not dealt with these doors yet. And that's because I want to show you some options here. One of the things that we can do is if we go into our build tab, construction, doors and windows, and let's go to doors. So if you have the Arctic pack, this little Arctic door right here is the only door in the game that fits this hole. That's it. That's the one choice you get. This is the only one. I don't know why. I don't know why they don't treat this hole as something that people actually want to use. But yeah, you can fit it in and it looks like an actual door frame. I find that it's blending in a little bit too well, which you might want for a staff building. Or at the very least for a staff entrance. You might not want it to be clearly observable. I do. I definitely do. So I'm going to use something like... Oh, what do we have? I find it odd that this building says that it has this little strip, and it doesn't. This one does. But I'm not liking the colors on any of these, and I'm not liking the style either. So we could do something like that one, or this one right here. This has a little bit more of that blue hue that we're getting from here. Even though it's in the metal, we're getting a little bit more. And I think it pops very nicely. So we are going to use this door right here. And then I think we're going to do the same thing over here for our... Actually, we're not. We're going to take this little staff entrance. And I think let's replace it with the metal. That's just going to finick. Bah, close enough. And it basically fits this shape, right? So now we need to frame out these doors. Because this gap looks weird. We can continue to go with wood. That's completely an option. We can decide to swap out what kinds of wood, or we can use a trim. So trims are not going to be in the wood tab. Let's zoom out. So Planet Zoo comes with a lot of trims, all of varying different qualities and uses. And so you can kind of mix and match a little bit. Like there's this thing, there's this L-bar little metal piece. So we can frame like that. We can use painted brick, alright, and then we can paint it with something. So we have a lot of choices. We can use this stone trim, but I think it looks excessive. So let's look at what we have for wood. Here we go. So we have these little painted square timbers, right? Now let's say that I wanted to pull one of the colors that's through here, and I wanted to blend it in. So I can take the red of these roofs. Alright, I guess it's more of like an orange, like a burnt sienna. And I can do that. But I don't think that this contrasts very well with either of these. I can also go through and I can use this blue, but it's not quite the same blue that's on here. This is sort of a problem with flexi-color channels. Just because you click the same color does not mean that it's going to appear the same way on each object. So that's something to consider. We can also go with maybe a dark blue, which I think looks nice. This, again, is already a gray that's sort of a blue shifted hue. So I think maybe we'll do something like that. And I think, these are not attached to our building. Let's merge our scenery into a group. I think I am going to push these in just a little bit. There we go. And maybe for now, I will do the same thing to this door over here. There we go. We did talk in the last episode about using these different lines as markers. So this is a 1 meter piece, and we can see that between this line and this line is 1 meter as well. I also mentioned that in certain pieces, you can also tell where a center line is, depending on where the wood has different line sets and markations. So this is one of the reasons why I like to build with the Arctic Wood build kit, is because these planks are very uniform in their measurements and I can get everything lined up perfectly. Alrighty, so now let's deal with this alcove. Let's build small, right? Building small is one of those things that gets very frustrating very quickly, but there are some easy ways around it. So one of the things that we could do is we could go in, and I'm not hugely in love with this Australia wood, but it does mix the reds and the blues with a little bit of a yellow, which is sort of our intermediary color. And we also have the yellow already in here, which is not going to be visible once that door opens. However, I don't think that I like the smoothness of the wood versus the roughness of this wood. We could instead go for a completely different material. For example, we could do concrete and change the color of our concrete. Maybe something a little darker like that. That's an option. Or we could do something completely custom. So custom building for detail, at its core, is taking small pieces to make a larger whole. The conservation pack I find is particularly good for this. Now, I don't like these 3D printed pieces. I don't like the texture on them. That's a personal preference. But what I do like are these little conservation wood cladding beams. So I can rotate these and even get a 1 meter. There we go. And figure out where I want my line to go. So something like that. I don't want this color, so let's find something that matches a little bit better. I think that this works well. It's a little bit bright, it's a little bit red. We can even pull it a little bit more neutral. I think that's probably fine. And our guy is in the way, so I'm just gonna have him move. There we go. And even this, I think, might be the wrong color. Duplicate in advanced move. There we go. And what we're doing here is I've placed 1, and then I've placed 2, and then I've got 4. And what I'm doing is I am compounding. I'm basically exponentially increasing the number of parts that I can select. It makes things a lot faster. I'll just adjust that. Select the whole line, dupe and move, and now we can come all the way across. And we've used a whole bunch of parts, but we've done it nice and quickly. So next let's talk about this surface. What are we going to want for that? Do we want to continue with this wood style, or do we want something else? I think that I want something that's a little bit harder. There we go. So I'm taking this bas relief of leaves. And this is a classic piece, which I believe means that it's going to fit in very well with the limestone. We could just get the limestone stuff. There's a couple of ways that we can choose to do this. We could either have the leaves facing up, which I think is a little bit too busy, or we can just have it facing down, and we get this nice smooth texture. I'm going to pull it across, finish off our countertop. Nice and simple. It does look a little bit weird that he would be standing on dirt, so this might be a place where we go and we get a floor piece. I think that breeze block makes a lot of sense. We notice that as small as we get this grid piece, it just isn't working out. So how do we make a custom floor? Well, I'm going to take this grid piece, I'm going to place it right there anyway, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to find a panel. I am a fan of the mud wall panels and the plaster panels. I'm going to take position snap and will this one do it? It will. So the plaster panels have a unique function where it will just align directly square with the flattest surface it can find. So in this case, it'll be this. So I'm going to click it. I'm going to click our breeze block, remove it. And then I'm going to move our panel down until it's just covering the surface. And now I've made a floor. So let's say that I want it to kind of match the interior, but not be so bright. Let's do something like this. There we go. And that is all it takes to make a custom floor. And you can continue this ad infinitum. You could make an entire patio this way. So we now have our mixed use building. It is functional. It's not necessarily looking amazing, but again, our scenery rating is up at 62%. We have just a little bit of clipping through here into the bathroom, but it's no longer affecting our bathroom guests. So that's good. That's exactly what we want. So we can, for the functionality of the game, stop right here. And we've managed to include a habitat, we've included our staff, and we've included our guests in one singular building, and we're meeting the needs of all three. From here, I can continue to detail this building out quite significantly, and detailing buildings, I feel, really needs to be kind of its own tutorial along with interiors. Both of those things are kind of difficult in their own animal. So what we can consider now is how this habitat is going to impact this building. So let's say that this is going to be something small and something that doesn't really mind a lot of people. So let's say that this is going to be meerkats. So if we go into meerkat, what we care about is this information right here. We know that its continent is going to be Africa, and we see that the biomes are going to be grassland and desert. So now when we go to our nature, we can filter for those things. Let's say that we don't want our guests to see this part of the wall. Well, our blackthorns are going to be really great for that. It's also going to block off the guest view, so that way they have to come around this direction. They're not going to look at them from over here while they're getting their food. Some plants have opacity to them that the guests do respect. So even though guests do not respect scenery in terms of movement, they do respect scenery in terms of what they can view through. So some objects are opaque and some objects are transparent. And this also applies to your plants. So for example, your common reeds, they're going to be considered opaque. It means that your guests can't see through them. And I believe that the hawthorn bush is also going to be one of those. So this blocks your guests from being able to see in to the habitat. It forces them to move to a direction where they can actually come look at the animals. So let's get in some deer and grass. Respecting that this zoo is on the tropical side, we're going to use the lush version of the tropical grass. We're going to turn on random rotations, that way I don't have to do it manually. And let's get another hawthorn bush, just to sort of tie it in. We'll put it on a corner. And let's get some mock habitat items. Tennis ball, bubbler. No, let's not get a bubbler. Let's get a tunnel. There we go. So because we are building for the meerkat, we can use the animal burrows. These are going to count as their hard shelters. And there are ways to incorporate them into the habitat where the guests get a camera view of them, which I find very handy. I'm going to put it like right there. In cases where you don't get this burrow, you may find yourself trying to figure out how exactly you're going to incorporate the animal shelter into it. One of the ways that you could do that is to expand on your existing building. So, for example, we could do something like that and either expand the border out a little bit. I'm going to raise this up just a little bit. I think it's a bit too low. And now this building helps to support. We could also have this awning come out from our building. And again, because it blocks the animal from the sun, this is going to count as hard shelter. So this is the world's simplest habitat. We don't have a lot going on in it. We don't have a lot of biodiversity. Perhaps we could add in like a couple of century plants. We could even add in a cork oak. Something a little bit more dynamic like that. We will go into a full building tutorial about habitats, again, at a later date. And we're now at 63. Let's see if it updates. It may or may not update. So depending on the closeness of your foliage to this building, it may also end up contributing to the scenery rating of this building as well. So taking elements of this habitat and pulling them out here, for example, using these hawthorn bushes again to maybe frame our staff path, maybe frame this edge right here. See, and now we're sort of pulling it into its own sort of location. It feels like it's less sort of a building that we sort of put down wherever, and it makes it feel like it's floating a lot less. So this is another way to do that. If we wanted to continue the idea that we have like a garden, we could pull out nature and go to hawthorn and get these little bushes. Maybe different shapes. Construction. Let's grab some breeze block. Let's grab some columns. Pull them horizontal. Let's get an acacia. Some nitaria. There we go. And maybe just a little bit of this grass. There we go. And now we've got ourselves a little garden. So we've just done simple elements, right? We haven't made anything initially pop. You know, this garden could use a little bit of work. This habitat can use a little bit of work. This building can use a little bit of work. What we've done is we've framed things and we've made them usable. And we've already hit a scenery rating of 72. So by the time that we finish fleshing out this entire area, we'll have met our basic game needs. And I find that working towards meeting the game's needs and then building upon the creative ideas that you have along the way is a good way to keep yourself moving forward without getting bogged down in any particular details. You sort of start big and go small. So for example, I have a dozen ideas of what I could do with this little area through here. I could even take out this box and I could replace it with another stand. I could add shelves here in the back, and then there are Indian pieces that have like little drinks on them, and I could use those. So there are lots of ways that you can begin to expand this, and you start to get these little creative pops, these little creative ideas. And building off of them and letting yourself, sort of use those to flow through a workload can help to take something really big and really complicated, like a mixed-use building, and turn it into something that fits a little better, feels better in the world. So I haven't decided what we're going to do next time. We might do interiors or we might do habitats. But either way, I hope that this was even a little bit useful. I know that it's not like the hyper-detailed sort of thing that you see other Planet Zoo YouTubers build, and we will get to a point where we can build those things, but for right now, I think that this is just a good way to start combining these different objects, combining these different ideas, and building yourself a framework, sort of mentally, for how you want to build forward. So, to that end, I think we're done. Hopefully this is useful. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Good luck building, and I'll see you next time.